There still is a lot of work to be done for the New York Giants to become one of the better teams in the NFC East and become a playoff team consistently in the NFC for years to come. However, they have already done a lot of work to become a much better team than they were last year, most notably adding 3 guys between John Runyan, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor to make their offensive line not only better, but have a more veteran presence along the offensive line. And you bring over 3 guys who, between John Runyan, Greg Van Roten, and Jermaine Illuminor, started all 17 games for their respective teams last year. And, you can't help but think that offensive line is a big issue when you've had a quarterback with as many injury issues as Daniel Jones over the last few years. And since they have decided to go the route where Daniel Jones is going to be the quarterback again this year, you need to make improvements on the offensive line to be able to make sure that he can stay upright. Especially when you're coming off of a torn ACL, you want to make sure that Daniel Jones is as comfortable as possible, not only in the pocket, but have comfortability in himself to be able to get outside the pocket and make plays happen for the New York Giants. Someone else that's going to be new to the team that's going to help Daniel Jones be able to make those plays is Malik Nabers, the first-round pick from LSU. Now, wide receiver-wise, the New York Giants are not really equipped to be the most... How do I say this? It's basically going to be Malik Nabers and then a bunch of other stuff. You add some fringe guys like Isaiah McKenzie, like Allen Robinson, like Miles Boykin. But other than that, you don't provide many other options for Daniel Jones. You have Jalen Hyatt and you have Wan'Dale Robinson, who I think are solid players. You also have Darius Slayton. You have Isaiah Hodgins, who came on last year as a solid option for a poor team offensively. But you just hope that Malik Nabers has the same effect on Daniel Jones that Justin Jefferson has had on guys like Kirk Cousins and everybody else that's been with the Minnesota Vikings at quarterback. And I'm not going to say that Jamar Chase made Joe Burrow a better quarterback, but he helped Joe Burrow become one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And you hope that Malik Nabers can have that same sort of improving effect on Daniel Jones that those other LSU receivers have had on their respective quarterbacks. And it's going to be pretty hard for the New York Giants to be any worse than they were last year as an offense. 30th in scoring, 29th in yards, 31st in passing the ball. The only thing that the New York Giants did well last year really offensively was that they were 12th in turnovers and they were 16th in running the ball. However, that 16th in rushing comes with the fact that they had Saquon Barkley on their team last year, who was able to play 14 games for the New York Giants. You lose Saquon Barkley, not only do you lose him to your rival in the Philadelphia Eagles, which makes that hurt even more. And you don't have a running back I think you can really consistently can count on the same way you could with Saquon Barkley. You do bring over Devin Singletary from the Houston Texans. You also draft Tyrone Tracy from Purdue in the 5th round. But I don't think that is really what you need to run the ball consistently. And that's okay. This isn't a team that's supposed to be there yet. This isn't the team for the New York Giants to trot out there and say, this is our best version of our team. This isn't it yet, offensively at least. And just to kind of put a cap on it, offensively, you have young players on this team who you think you want to take a step to make this team better. You have young skill players like Wan'Dale Robinson, like Jalen Hyatt, like Malik Nabers, who you think you at least want to develop something with Daniel Jones to make Daniel a top half of the league quarterback. If you can have Daniel Jones be a top half of the league quarterback, you're going to win games in the NFL. There's 14 teams in the NFL that end up going to the playoffs, and half of those teams are in the NFC. So if you are just trying to play a probability game, I guess, if you're in the top half of the league at quarterback, you're going to have a good chance of getting your team into the playoffs. I don't think Daniel Jones was very great the year that the New York Giants made the playoffs 2 years ago. And I don't think the Giants as a team were really that great. I think they kind of snuck their way in and they flew under the radar a bit. Now you have a team offensively where you're going to have to play that same sort of game because there's going to be very little expectations out of this offense, mostly because of the fact that Daniel Jones is the quarterback. So if he wants to get this team to the playoffs, if he wants to earn some sort of notoriety in the NFL, he has to do something with this offense that nobody expects him to do. The offensive line is pretty good. I will say that. The offensive line is pretty good. They've already replaced Evan Neal, which seems a little weird to me. I can't see Evan Neal taking over the left tackle spot from Andrew Thomas. I can't see him taking over the right tackle spot from a Jermaine Illuminor, who they just bring over from Las Vegas. And I can't see him getting kicked into guard, where, again, they found their replacements at guard between John Runyon from Green Bay and Greg Van Roten from Las Vegas. And he's obviously not playing center. So I don't know what they're going to do with Evan Neal. I don't know if this is just a year off for him and we're just going to see where we are next year. But either way, I just don't see where we go from here with Evan Neal. Now, the defense. This is where I get pretty excited for the New York Giants. And this is where you look at this side of the ball for New York and you say this could be how they end up in the playoffs. And it's not because they're going to be a world-beating defense. I think based on last year, a team that was 26th in defense in terms of scoring, 27th in yards allowed, 19th in passing, and 29th in rushing defense, I don't think they got much better than they did last year. They trade for Brian Burns, who obviously, when you're trying to stop the pass, having somebody who can hit the quarterback is something that you really want to have. And you bring in Tyler Nubin from Minnesota, who you draft in the second round. You draft Andrew Phillips from Kentucky. You add some other solid players like a Jordan Phillips from Buffalo, like a Jalen Mills from New England, who I don't really enjoy watching, but, you know, he makes some plays from time to time. However, losses for this defense are pretty impactful. You lose Xavier McKinney to Green Bay, who, yes, you do have guys like Jason Pinnock, and you do draft Tyler Nubin to hopefully replace that production that Xavier McKinney had. You lose A'Shawn Robinson, who's not, you know, the best player in the world, but he was a solid player for New York last year. I just don't really know if this is the full defense yet. It's a lot like the offense, where I just don't know if this is it for this defense yet. Dexter Lawrence, an incredible nose tackle. Brian Burns, an incredible pass rusher. Kayvon Thibodeau, an incredible pass rusher. Bobby Okereke, a very solid off-the-ball linebacker. I think Drew Phillips, Deonte Banks, you hope those two are your young corners for the future. Jason Pinnock and Tyler Nubin. I think you hope that those are your young safeties for the future. But I just don't know where the ceiling is for this team, because I think it's around middle of the pack defensively. And look, that's a huge improvement from where they were last year. Like I said, 26th in scoring, 27th in yards allowed, 19th in passing yards allowed, and 29th in rushing yards allowed. If you're middle of the pack, you're improving in all of those categories. And if they stay at least in the top 5 or top 10 in terms of the takeaway number, where, again, they were first in takeaways last year, if they stay anywhere close to that, not only are they going to be a good team, they're going to win some games and get them possibly into that spot where they're, you know, sneaking into the playoffs, maybe winning a game or two. You just never know what's going to happen once you actually get into the playoffs. And, you know, if you sneak in, nobody's going to say anything after you win a playoff game. Ask the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So what does this year look like in terms of a record standpoint? I think the schedule is pretty tough. You have away games at Cleveland, at Seattle, at Pittsburgh, at Dallas, at Atlanta, and at Philadelphia to end the year. And your home games, you welcome the Baltimore Ravens into town. You obviously play Dallas. You play Cincinnati on Sunday Night Football. I don't know for sure. Like I said, I don't think this is the team New York. I don't think this is the team Brian Daboll is trotting out there with the intentions of being the playoff Super Bowl caliber team that he wants. I don't think this is the team yet. And I think they know that. And I think they know this is still a year to try to improve the roster, to try to improve the depth, and try to get some experience under the feet of a lot of these guys. But this team could still win some games. I could see a ceiling for this team of about 10 wins and making the playoffs and possibly making some noise in the playoffs. We've seen Daniel Jones do it before, and if he's healthy, I think we could see him do it again. With these young skill players that they have, with the much improved offensive line, and with a defense that could make some noise, and if they're middle of the pack, they're going to be pretty good in terms of where they're going to be positioned in their standings. Now, everything could go wrong. Everything could possibly go wrong. The young skill players could be so young that they don't know what they're doing yet. The offensive line could be much improved, but if the quarterback doesn't make enough plays, it's not going to matter. The running game could be so poor that it's just unusable. And the defense could be middle of the pack. I could totally see this team bottoming out, winning 3 games, winning 4 games, and picking first in the NFL draft next year, hoping to get a quarterback, hoping to get some sort of skill position player to absolutely transform the offense. And I think they wanted that in this year's draft. I think if you watch the Hard Knocks on the New York Giants through the offseason this year, you totally saw Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen's attempt to try to get a playmaking quarterback to hopefully take over the reins as starting quarterback for the New York Giants. I think you totally saw that. Now, once Jaden Daniels was gone, once Drake May was gone, and once Marvin Harrison was gone, you kind of had to take the next best playmaker available, and that was Malik Nabers, and they did a pretty good job of that. But I don't know if it's for sure what they wanted. I think they wanted a quarterback, and I think they saw that this year was a pretty good year for quarterbacks. And if you're watching preseason games this year, you've seen Jaden Daniels make plays already. You've seen Caleb Williams make plays already. We haven't seen a lot from Drake May, but we think that we're going to see some good things out of Drake May this season and this, rest of his career. So, yes, it's a pretty stark difference between bottoming out and being a playoff team, but that's kind of where the New York Giants are. And I would tend to lean more towards being a playoff team, though. I think even if some things go wrong for this team, they're still a pretty talented roster. They're still a pretty good team. And yeah, making the playoffs is totally attainable for this team. They're in a division where they're probably the last thought about team, but that's probably a good position that you want to be in because nobody's going to have expectations from you. Nobody's going to be every day thinking, are the New York Giants a Super Bowl team? Are they the team to beat in the NFC East? Nobody's saying that about them. So they don't have a target. They don't have any sort of expectations from the other teams in the division or in any other teams in the conference. And I think that's a pretty good place to be if you're trying to make some noise and make an upset in the playoffs.